You're the most beautiful woman in this room.
You say that to everyone.
Only you.
I haven't slept in 2 years.
Chamomile tea, honey, my mother swears by it.
My grandmother said the same thing.
Clara, wait.
What is this?
A reason to stay.
I'd sit on that kitchen floor forever for you.
You'll never have to.
She woke up at 4 in the morning. Every single day. Not because she wanted to. But because she had to. She had a daughter to feed, a mother to care for, and a debt that kept growing no matter how hard she worked. She was 31 years old, and she had already buried more dreams than most people ever get to dream. Her name was Clara. And she had no idea that the house she was about to walk into, the house she had taken a job cleaning, was about to change the entire course of her life. But not in the way you think. Because what happens in this story isn't a fairy tale. It's something much more complicated. Much more painful. And in the end, much more beautiful. Before we go any further, we'd love to know, where are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments right now. We read every single one. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming stories. We post every week, and trust us, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Let's go back to the beginning. Because to understand Clara, you have to understand where she came from. She grew up in a small town outside of Memphis, Tennessee, the kind of town where the grocery store closed at 7 and everybody knew everybody else's business. Her mother, Ruth, worked 2 jobs her whole life, a cashier at a gas station by day, a seamstress by night. Her father left when Clara was 9. She remembers the morning he left. She remembers the smell of burnt coffee and the sound of the screen door closing. She stood at the window and watched his truck pull out of the driveway, and she promised herself she would never let anyone make her feel that small again. She kept that promise. Until life found a way to bring her to her knees anyway. Clara was smart. She got into a state university on a partial scholarship, studied business administration, and for a brief, shining moment, it looked like she was going to be the one who made it out. She had a plan. She had ambition. She had hope. And then, in her junior year, she met Marcus. Marcus was charming. Marcus was funny. Marcus told her she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. And Clara, who had spent her whole life being told to be careful, be strong, don't trust too easily, let her guard down. She fell in love the way only someone who has never really been loved properly can fall. Completely. Recklessly. Without a single safety net. By the time she was 23, she had a daughter named Lily, a broken engagement, and a half-finished college degree. Marcus was gone. Not dead. Just gone. The kind of gone that sends a child support check every few months and never shows up for birthdays. Clara packed Lily into a second-hand car seat and moved back home to Memphis to take care of her mother, who had been diagnosed with early-stage diabetes and couldn't walk the way she used to. And just like that, the woman with the plan had no plan at all. For the next several years, Clara worked whatever jobs she could find. A receptionist position at a dental office. A night shift at a call center. A few months as a server at a downtown restaurant. She was always working. She was never getting ahead. The rent kept climbing. Lily kept growing. And Ruth, God bless her, kept praying out loud at the kitchen table every morning like prayer was the only currency she had left. Clara respected her mother's faith. But there were nights when she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the pile of bills on her nightstand, and she wondered if God was even listening. Then one morning, a neighbor mentioned a cleaning agency that paid well, better than anything Clara had tried before. They placed domestic workers in high-end homes across the city and in the wealthy neighborhoods outside it. Clara hesitated. She had her pride. But pride doesn't keep the lights on. She called the agency. She passed the background check. And 3 weeks later, she was assigned to a property on the outskirts of Memphis, a sprawling estate that sat on 12 acres of land, surrounded by oak trees that looked like they had been standing since before the Civil War. The house itself was something out of a magazine. Stone and glass and wide windows that caught the light in the early morning and threw it across the floors like something alive. She stood at the gate that first morning, her cleaning caddy in one hand, her phone in the other, and she thought to herself, who lives like this? She was about to find out. His name was Daniel Whitmore. And if you looked him up, which half of Memphis could, you would find a man who had built a real estate empire from almost nothing. His father had been a contractor, a man who worked with his hands and left Daniel a small company and a mountain of debt when he died. Daniel was 26 when he inherited that debt. He was 38 when he was worth $400 million. He had done it through relentless work, sharp instincts, and a willingness to take risks that made other businessmen sweat. The press loved him. The city respected him. And the women who dated him, well, they tended not to last very long. Not because Daniel was cruel. He wasn't. But he was, and anyone close to him would tell you this, emotionally unreachable. His ex-fiancée, a woman named Stephanie, a corporate attorney from Nashville, had said it plainly in a conversation with a mutual friend that eventually got back to Daniel. He's the kindest man I've ever met and the loneliest. Daniel had read that and felt nothing. Which, if you think about it, proved her point entirely. By the time Clara came to work at the estate, Daniel had been living alone for 2 years. He had a housekeeper, an older woman named Mrs. Patterson, who managed the property, but she had recently retired. The cleaning agency had been brought in to handle the transition. Clara was one of 3 workers assigned to the house. She was given the east wing, the library, the hallway bedrooms, and the home office. She was told by the agency, keep things tidy, be discreet, do not engage with the client unless he initiates. Clara had no interest in engaging with anyone. She just wanted to do her job and go home to Lily. The first time Daniel saw Clara, he didn't say a word to her. She was on her knees in the hallway, scrubbing a stain out of the baseboard with a toothbrush, and he walked past her with a coffee cup and a phone pressed to his ear, mid-sentence, not even looking down. She noticed him the way you notice someone in your peripheral vision, briefly, without interest. He was tall, well-dressed, moving fast, the way powerful people always do, like time itself is chasing them. She went back to the baseboard. The second time was different. It was a Tuesday morning, about 3 weeks into the assignment. Clara had arrived earlier than usual because Lily's school had a late start and she'd been able to drop her off at her mother's. She was in the library, dusting the shelves, when she pulled out a book that had been shelved upside down and spinning. It was a copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. She laughed a little to herself, because this was her favorite book. She had read it 4 times. She set it right side up on the shelf. And then she heard a voice from the doorway. You know that book? She turned. Daniel was standing there, still in the clothes he'd clearly slept in, holding a glass of water, looking not powerful at all, just tired. Just human. I do, she said. It was the first book that ever made me feel like someone understood me. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, that's exactly why I bought it. And I've never actually read it. And Clara laughed, a real laugh, the kind that surprised even her. And Daniel Whitmore, for the first time in a very long time, smiled. Now, let's pause here for a second, because I want to ask you something. If you were Clara, standing in that library, holding a book that felt like a piece of your own soul, and the man who owned the house looked at you, really looked at you, for the first time, what would you have done? Would you have kept your professional distance? Would you have let yourself be seen? Think about that. Because what Clara chose next changed everything. She chose honesty. She handed him the book. She said, start with chapter 3. That's where it gets you. And she went back to dusting. Over the next few weeks, something quietly shifted in the house. Daniel started reading the book. He left it on the kitchen counter one morning, a sticky note on the cover that said simply, Chapter 3 got me. You were right. Clara found it when she came in. She read the note 3 times. She didn't know what to do with the warmth she felt, so she folded it, tucked it into her pocket, and said nothing. But they kept talking. Not about anything grand, not at first. He asked her how Lily was doing when she mentioned her daughter once, offhandedly, and she was surprised that he remembered. She asked him, one morning when he looked particularly exhausted, if he had slept at all. He said he hadn't. He said he hadn't slept well in 2 years. She told him that her mother swore by chamomile tea with a spoonful of honey. He said that sounded like something his grandmother used to do. They talked about grandmothers for 20 minutes standing in his kitchen. She was still holding a mop. He was still in his suit. And neither of them seemed to notice how strange it was, or how easy it felt. Do you ever meet someone who just fits? Not romantically, not yet, not necessarily, but just as a person. Someone whose company makes the air in the room feel lighter. That's what was happening in that house. And Clara, who had spent years keeping walls up, who had learned the hard way what it cost to let someone in, felt something in herself beginning, very slowly, very reluctantly, to open. But life doesn't let beautiful things stay uncomplicated for long. 6 weeks in, the agency called Clara and told her the assignment was being reduced, budget reasons, they said. 2 of the 3 workers would be cut. Clara, being the newest, was among them. Her last day was a Friday. She cleaned the east wing one final time, smoothed the bedsheet she had made 100 times, straightened the books in the library, and said a quiet goodbye to the room she had come to know better than some rooms in her own home. She was almost to the door when Daniel appeared. He had clearly been looking for her. He was holding a piece of paper. He handed it to her. It was a letter of reference, detailed, glowing, typed on his personal letterhead. In case you need it, he said. Though I'm hoping you won't. She looked up at him. What does that mean? He took a breath. I spoke with the agency. I want to bring you on directly. As a household manager. The pay is better. The hours are more stable. If you want it. Clara stood very still. She was not naive. She knew what people would think. She knew what this looked like. She thought about Lily. She thought about her mother's medication bills. She thought about the way she had felt in this house, not less than, not invisible, but seen. She said yes. Now, and this is important, what happened next was not a movie romance. It was not a sweep her off her feet moment. It was something slower, messier, and more real than that. Because Clara took the job and did it with everything she had. She organized the household, managed the vendors, oversaw repairs, and kept the estate running with the kind of quiet competence that made Daniel wonder how he had ever managed without her. They developed a rhythm. A trust. He started telling her things he didn't tell his board. She started letting herself look forward to the days she came in. 3 months passed. And then one evening in December, it was cold, the kind of cold Memphis rarely gets, with a thin glaze of ice on the driveway. Clara stayed late to supervise a plumber and Daniel came home to find her sitting on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, Lily asleep on her lap, because the babysitter had cancelled and her mother had had a bad day and there was nowhere else for the child to go. Clara looked up at him with the expression of someone bracing for anger. He looked down at the sleeping little girl and said quietly, "Is she okay?" And Clara said, "She's fine. I'm sorry. I figure something out." And Daniel sat down on the kitchen floor beside them without a word, and they sat there together in the quiet house while the heat kicked on and the night settled in, and something passed between them that neither of them knew how to name yet. Before we continue, I have to ask, how many of you have ever been in a moment like that? A moment that wasn't supposed to mean anything, but it changed something in you. Tell us in the comments. We want to hear your story too. Daniel told her how he felt 2 weeks before Christmas. He did it badly, haltingly, without the smooth confidence that he carried into boardrooms. He told her he didn't know what to do with what he was feeling. He told her he had been sitting across from her at that kitchen counter for months trying to convince himself it was nothing. He told her he was telling her because he couldn't not tell her, and that if she wanted to walk out and never come back, he would understand, and he would give her 6 months severance and a reference that would get her hired anywhere she wanted. Clara listened to all of it. And then she said, "Daniel, I'm your employee." He said, "I know." She said, "I clean your house." He said, I know that too. A long pause. Then, my mother is going to think you've lost your mind. He said, my attorney already told me the same thing. And somewhere in that impossibly unglamorous conversation, in the kitchen of a 12-acre estate in Memphis, something real was born. But here is where the story becomes harder. Because the world outside that kitchen had opinions. Strong ones. When word got out, and in a city like Memphis, it always gets out, the reaction was swift and unkind. People who had never spoken to Clara in their life suddenly had things to say about her. She was called calculating. She was called opportunistic. Former colleagues of Daniel's, men who had smiled at her and looked right through her when she walked in that house, now spoke about her on social media as though she were a cautionary tale. One local gossip blog ran a headline that made her hands shake when she read it. She didn't tell Daniel about it at first. She sat with it alone, the way women like Clara learned to sit with pain, quietly, thoroughly, without showing it to anyone who might use it against her. And then there was Marcus, Lily's father, who had not called in 8 months, who suddenly reappeared when he saw a photo of Clara at a charity gala with Daniel, a photo someone had taken without her knowledge and posted online. Marcus called, not to apologize, not to ask about his daughter, but to say, I heard you landed yourself a rich man. Good for you. Clara hung up the phone, went into her bathroom, ran the water so Lily couldn't hear, and cried in a way she hadn't let herself cry in years. Not because of Marcus. Because she was tired. Because she had worked so hard, for so long, and still, people couldn't look at her and see the truth of what she was. Daniel found out about all of it eventually. About the blog, about Marcus, about the calls. He was furious in the quiet, measured way that frightened people more than shouting. He sat across from her and said, tell me what you need. She said, I need people to stop acting like I don't deserve to be happy. He said, then let's give them something worth saying. 14 months after Clara first walked through those iron gates with her cleaning caddy and her quiet pride, Daniel proposed. Not with a grand gesture in front of cameras. Not with a hired violinist or a crowd of witnesses. He proposed on a Tuesday morning in the library, with a copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God open in his hand, and a ring tucked inside the back cover. He said, I found a bookmark for my favorite page. She opened it. She saw the ring. She laughed. Then she cried. Then she said yes 3 times, quickly, like she was afraid someone would take it back. Lily, who was 7 by then and had developed a deep and unshakable attachment to Daniel's enormous kitchen and his equally enormous television, looked up from her cereal when they came back into the room and said, are we staying now? And Clara said, yes, baby. We are staying. And that was the moment that broke her open in the best possible way. They married the following spring. It was not a wedding that made the society pages of any major publication, because Daniel had specifically asked that it not. It was held on the estate, with 60 people, family, close friends, the people who had mattered long before the money ever did. Ruth, Clara's mother, walked her daughter down the aisle in a lavender dress she had sewn herself, and when the pastor asked who gave this woman, Ruth said in a voice that carried all the way to the back row, her mama does. And she's more than worthy of everything good in this world. There was not a dryer in the garden. And so here we are. At the part of the story where most people expect the music to swell and the credits to roll. But I want to leave you with something more honest than that. Because Clara will tell you, and she has told it in the handful of interviews she has quietly agreed to, that the love story was never really the point. The point was the morning she stood at that gate with a cleaning caddy and a mountain of debt and chose to walk through it anyway. The point was the night she sat at that kitchen table going over bills with shaking hands and still got up the next morning. The point was every time the world told her she was less than, and she kept showing up as exactly who she was. The love story was beautiful. But the woman who made it possible, that quiet, tired, brilliant, determined woman, she was the real miracle. Ask yourself this, how many times have you talked yourself out of walking through a door because you decided you didn't belong on the other side? How many times has shame or fear or someone else's voice in your head kept you small? Clara cleaned a billionaire's house. And in doing so, she refused to let the work define her worth. That is not a small thing. That is the whole thing. And if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been in a room where people looked right through you, I want you to think about Clara on that kitchen floor with her daughter asleep in her lap, not embarrassed, not broken, just human. And I want you to know, your story isn't over. Not even close. What would you have done if you were in Clara's shoes? Would you have taken that job? Would you have said yes when he told you how he felt? Or would the fear have been too loud? Let us know in the comments. We genuinely want to know what you think, and don't be shy. This community is real, and your thoughts matter here. And if this story moved you, if it made you feel something, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. You never know who's sitting somewhere right now feeling invisible, feeling like their story doesn't count. Let this be the reminder that it does. Always. And if you think this story was powerful, wait until you hear what we have coming next week. It involves a secret kept for 22 years, a letter found inside a war, and a truth that turned an entire family's history upside down. You will not want to miss it. Subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you, truly, for watching all the way to the end. That means more than you know,